Hello and welcome to my presentation on the factors which affect the success of auctions. Over the next few minutes we're going to cover a number of aspects of auction sales which will empower you to make better decisions going forward. The first of those is when in time is price maximised during an auction sale process and why. We'll look at the buyer motivating effect of advertising the property with the right price. We'll review what damage occurs when the price is set a little bit too high, the untold consequences of having no advertised price, the surprising effect of inadvertently underpricing the property, and how to collaborate with your real estate agent to ensure that you're advertising the property at the right price. Steve Vonderbock is my name. I've been a real estate agent since 1984. I've conducted thousands of auctions and sold millions and millions of dollars worth of property since 1992 as an auctioneer. The auction method of sale is my bread and butter, and I coach real estate salespeople on how to do that effectively. Over the next few minutes, there is the potential to increase your wealth through watching this presentation. Now, we're going to assume a couple of elements are already in place when it comes to selling the property. These are the essential pre-existing elements. That the property is well presented for the market, that there's a marketing plan in place that is consummate with the qualities of the property, that your agent is highly skilled in managing the auction process. Well, as I have the experience that I bring to the table, obviously that is the case. And of course, as your auctioneer, paired with the fact I'm your real estate salesperson, it's an extremely powerful position to be in when you're dealing with the buyers both before the auction and encouraging them to participate, and on the auction day, because I will have a relationship with them which is superior to that which only a salesperson or someone who's just acting as the salesperson will have. Now, the x-axis of this timeline or this graph that I'm going to show you maps out the phases of an auction in weeks. You've got preliminary notice period leading to the auction campaign, culminating in a sale on auction day. That's the plan. If you don't sell it on the day, then you've got negotiation period afterwards. And then if that doesn't work, there's a priced approach to marketing. Price is maximised around auction day. I'm going to demonstrate in this presentation why that is the case. Either side of it can work, but on auction day in particular. The y-axis of the graph measures the number of buyers that are currently interested in the property. It runs from low to high, and we've got a couple of lines which we've applied to the graph which are helpful in understanding what's occurring. The first of those, the red line, is a line below which you do not want to be because there are no buyers there. You've got no offers on the property. In the area above the red line, you've got a chance because you can negotiate with one buyer, but there's no competition to drive the price up. And then the area above the blue line is where we all want to be as the salesperson, the agent and the owner. And that is where we've got 2, 5, 7 and more registered bidders to compete for the property, and it's competition which drives the price up. So let's look at how that actually occurs, and particularly if it's done correctly, the price is quoted correctly, and you've got a really good chance of maximising price on the day. In fact, it's almost inevitable if you do it really well. So the idea here is that in the first instance, you'll see a good number of inquiries on the property via email, which have been generated by advertising and our own resources in the way of marketing. We then have those people attend the first open inspections, but they're not quite ready to buy the property. They're not in a position, not many of them anyway, because they need to do their due diligence, whether it be checking out the building or obtaining finance. The price seems tempting though, and it keeps them interested in the property, and this is what builds your numbers, the fact that the price is set at the right level. And this results in quite a number of people qualifying themselves, and really that reaches its peak at around about the 3-week mark when we're about to conduct the auction. Now, you can sell the property right immediately before and do okay, but it's on auction day where things really do have a chance of absolutely maximising. And the reason for that is that buyers only really find out what a property is truly worth to them when they're about to lose the property to another buyer. And that never happens so apparently and so, well, in their face, if you like, as it does at an auction sale because of its transparency. Now, even so, you can have the property priced correctly and find yourself without enough bidding or just falling short of where you would like to be as the seller. And in that case, you're passing the property, you're not holding it over, and you're dealing with people after auction. And that's no tragedy, because you still have multiple people interested in buying the property, and they're fearful of losing it to someone else. So that's a great position to be in. Even so, it's not as good as auction day if you can possibly get it away then. Now, this almost guarantees that the property will never enter the price marketing zone. You'd have to have a lot of bad luck for that to happen, because if you've got those multiple people, you're going to sell the property. You're not going to have to worry about going forward. Contrast that with the situation that occurs when you price the property a little bit too high and the damage is quite apparent. And by a little too high, I don't mean much. I mean 2 or 3% over the top, and this is the sort of damage which occurs. Make it 5 or 7 and you've got a disaster in terms of any likelihood of selling the property at auction. So in the first instance, you see a fairly normal number of people inquire about the property, but then they weigh up the value proposition as they look at the property online, and some of them will decide not to go to the home. And those that do go are not as likely to return, because they don't have the belief that the price that you're quoting is going to be fair. That they don't have a fair chance of buying the property at a reasonable level. And so they don't bring back family, they don't do the normal checks and their due diligence. You have one registered bidder on the day. You might have some others, but they're not serious about the property. So no one's there to push your buyer, your very best buyer up. And your other buyers that should have been there, they're just not there to compete for it anyway. That might top out and that'll be it. You're less likely to sell it on the day, but there's still a chance, because as the agent and the auctioneer, particularly if I'm doing it, I'm in a position where I've got a half a chance of negotiating something under the hammer and getting more money than those buyers stopped at. But you go on from that if you don't sell it under the hammer, and you've got negotiations afterwards, but there's not as much pressure on the buyer as there would be if the price had been set correctly. So it's harder to achieve that great price. You're more likely then to slip into the zone where the property is not sold, and you need to work at a price marketing approach to the sale of the property, trying to generate new interest and get people back on it. The problem here is that you never get back to where you were, but what happens is that you do have a chance to set that price pretty accurately, because now you have market feedback which has been provided by virtue of the fact that you did quote a price. So with no competition, there's little pressure on the buyer to pay a high price, and slightly overpriced properties receive a lower price. Now contrast that with when there's no advertised price, and a lot of agents advocate this. They say this is the way we do it. We don't quote a price. Auctions don't have prices, and there's an assumption that that's the case, but it's not true. Absolutely, you should quote a price, but agents who list the property this way find it easier, because they don't have to have that really hard conversation with people to bring great effect to their auction. It's easier to say, well, we just won't put a price on it. Then they don't have to have this discussion about what to set it at. So what you'll see happen when this occurs is that there's some buyers who just completely object to not having any idea about where the property might even start, and so they don't even come to the property. And then of course, if they do, they're less likely to return, because there's this fundamental belief that anyone without a price it wants too much for it. And so this is a turn off for buyers. Imagine yourself, it's human nature really, imagine yourself going into a shop where there's goods for sale and there's no prices on anything. How does that feel? Compare that to the shop next door, which has the same goods and prices on them, and they're fair enough. How do you feel? Where are you more likely to do your business? No price shop or the price shop? Same with restaurants. When you're in a holiday strip of restaurants, you're on a holiday somewhere, you walk past the restaurant, you see the price on the menu for the various dishes, the photographs and so on, and you're able to weigh up the value proposition. Go next door and there's the same menu but no prices on anything. Where are you more likely to walk in? Would you be worried about walking into the establishment with no prices and then having to get up? You'll try and avoid that. No priced approach turns buyers off. And worse still, what happens is that when people do come to the auction, because you don't have a price on it, you'll get wishful thinkers. Why? Because they don't know not to be there. And the agent will point to this as some sort of evidence. Well, look, we've got these people $100,000 below what you wanted, as if They would have been there had you put the right price on the property. Well, of course they wouldn't have been there, and you don't have the people that would have been generated if you had put a price on there. So this is no evidence of what a property is worth. And you can still sell a property on the day, and agents who don't quote a price will talk of their great successes. But in reality, you're cutting yourself short, and you're more likely to slip into the zone where you're pricing trying to negotiate afterwards, and pricing the property at that point is very difficult. You can find yourself in all sorts of strife simply because they want to know how much you want now. But what evidence have you got to point out? You've got no reaction to a price quoted. You've just got people there, unqualified people. And so it's not much good. And you're more likely to slip into the zone where you need to market the property with a price. But again, it's hard to come up with a figure to advertise the property at, because there's no evidence of the market response to the price that you quoted, because you didn't quote one. And so you tend to overprice at that point, just still seeing if you can get it, more likely than if you did quote a figure that you had a response to and you're able to measure properly. And then, of course, there's a real danger that the property goes stale. So buyers want to know a price, even if it's not reliable. No price equals fewer buyers. No price also means you learn little when you come to the after period when you need to price the property going forward. And we'll talk more about that in a moment. Now, what is really fascinating is when you inadvertently advertise the property too low. And this happens frequently in a rising market. It can happen at any time, but very frequently in a rising market. And you may have seen examples of this out in the world over the last few months. And you'll recognise the symptoms for it, because this is what happens, is that in the first instance you get a massive number of emails on the property, perhaps 30 to 50 emails on the property, and then you get 100 people attending your open inspections. I had one recently where we had 100 at each of the 3 first open inspection, 100 groups through. And this is because it turned out that this property was underpriced because it took 5 or 6 weeks for it to come to the market. The maximum reserve price was set at the time we listed the property, and now we're in the position where we can't set the reserve price any higher. The market was aware of that. They came along in droves. They were begging to buy the property before auction. One individual party made an offer of $100,000 over the maximum reserve price. So we ended up, the owner rejected that because he could see that there was a lot of interest and he wanted to test the market really well. And just as well he did, because on auction day we just didn't get the normal 10 buyers if you do this inadvertently. We got 48 registered bidders, the most I've ever had in my sales career. And the property sold. I mean, there was no question. Whenever this scenario occurs, you don't have to worry about marketing the property afterwards, because it's gone. You will get over 10% above where you've quoted the property. And then, of course, what happens at the auction is, with that many people, you're bound to get multiples who've missed out on other properties, and they will stretch to well above the limit they came to the auction with. So that's how to recognise a underpriced auction, and we can help you work through that if it's the case, if that were to occur. So what happens after auction if the price is adjusted? If you haven't sold it under the hammer, well, you can try and set your price and generate a buyer that you negotiate with, or if you set it a little bit more aggressively, you might get into the multiple buyer zone, but you'll never get to the point where you would have been had you only advertised the property from the outset. And when prices reduce, buyer interest can be reinvigorated, but never to the level it would have been if the price was set correctly in the first instance. Now, just summing up here, this is really important, how to motivate buyers and maximise price. That's what we're all about. And so in the first instance, what you want to do is you want to say to the agent, tell me what I need to hear, not what I want to hear. Anybody who stretches their price by telling the agent that they want too much, they're going to run into trouble in trying to sell that property under the hammer. Avoid agents who don't quote a price. I've already been over all the reasons why you would. It's just not worth the risk. Ensure that the advertised price is set at a level which is encouraging interest. And how do you do that? It's really simple. You make sure that the maximum reserve price is realistic as a sale price, and then you can quote something which is encouraging of interest, and then appoint an agent and an auctioneer who understands the process, and obviously I'm that person. So Steve Vonderbach is my name. I've been a real estate salesperson for a long time. I'd love to be your auctioneer in this particular instance. It would be my honour. There's my contact details. I'll be talking with you shortly.